The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council stood silent as the delegates filed in. The massive dome stretched high above, its walls carved from ancient stone that had witnessed 1,000 years of decisions. Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his uniform and glanced at Ambassador Linda Hayes beside him. They had traveled 3 months through space to reach this place, and now they stood among beings from 100 different worlds. Elder Voxthran entered last. The ancient Krellian moved slowly, his 4 arms folded in contemplation. His scales, once bright blue, had faded to a pale silver with age. Every species in the chamber knew his story. He had lived through the Great Expansion, the Border Wars, and the Time of Unity. He had seen empires rise and fall. Chancellor Drath of the Zerati Empire stood at the center platform. His red armor gleamed under the chamber lights. The Zerati were warriors, proud and fierce. Drath's voice boomed across the hall. The frontier sectors belong to those strong enough to claim them. The Zerati have that strength. Jake felt Linda tense beside him. The frontier sectors included 20 human colonies. 3 million people called those worlds home. They were farmers, scientists, families building new lives far from Earth. The territories are unclaimed under council law, Linda said, her voice calm but firm. All species have equal rights to settle there. Drath turned to face her. His eyes narrowed. Equal rights. The strong take what they can defend. That is the true law of the universe. Elder Voxthran raised one weathered hand. The chamber fell silent. When the elder spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. I have seen this before. Young species, full of fire and pride, believe strength alone matters. They look at others who seek peace and call them weak. His ancient eyes moved to Drath. I caution you, Chancellor. There are species in this galaxy you do not wish to provoke. Drath laughed. You speak of humans? These beings who build farms instead of fleets? Who offer treaties instead of taking territory? They are proof that peace is weakness. You misunderstand, Voxthran said softly. Humans choose peace. That is different from being incapable of war. Then let them prove otherwise, Drath declared. He pulled out a data tablet and displayed images across the chamber screens. They showed Zerati ships near human colonies. My forces have been testing their defenses for months. Their response? Diplomatic messages. Complaints to this council. No action. Jake's jaw tightened. He had read those reports. Zerati vessels entering human space without permission. Harassment of cargo ships. Threats broadcast to civilian stations. Each time, Earth had urged patience. Work through proper channels. Let the Council mediate. We have shown restraint because we value peace, Jake said. Do not mistake that for inability. Drath stepped closer to the human delegation. I mistake it for exactly what it is. Fear. You know the Zerati Empire would crush your colonies if we chose to do so. Linda stood. We are offering you a treaty. Fair borders. Trade agreements. Mutual respect. These things benefit everyone. I do not negotiate with the weak, Drath said. He turned to address the full council. The Zerati Empire claims the frontier sectors. Any who oppose this claim will face our fleets. The chamber erupted in voices. Delegates argued and shouted. Some supported the Zerati right to expand. Others protested the aggressive stance. Jake noticed that Elder Voxthran simply sat in silence, his expression sad. The council session ended without resolution. Jake and Linda returned to their quarters in the diplomatic sector. The message came 3 hours later. Jake read the words on his screen twice, unable to process them at first. His hands began to shake. Linda looked over his shoulder and gasped. New Haven Colony. Population 3,000. The Zerati had attacked without warning. Their warships had bombarded the settlements from orbit. When the colonists tried to surrender, the Zerati forces had landed and continued the assault. The casualties were complete. Men, women, children. The agricultural domes had been shattered. The residential areas burned. It had not been a military operation. It had been a massacre meant to send a message. Jake stood slowly. His face had gone pale, then flushed with an emotion Linda had never seen from him before. His eyes held something cold and terrible. "Jake," Linda said quietly. He pulled up the communication system and began typing commands. "Get me a secure line to Earth. Priority Alpha. What are you going to tell them?" "The truth. That diplomacy has failed. That the Galactic Council cannot protect our people. That the Zerati have made their choice." Linda felt a chill run down her spine. She had worked with Jake for 6 years. She had seen him negotiate peace between warring factions. She had watched him find compromise where others saw only conflict. But now, looking at his expression, she saw something different. The next morning, Jake and Linda returned to the council chamber for an emergency session. Elder Voxthran was already there. He looked at Jake and slowly shook his head. "The elders cautioned never dare to provoke humans," Voxthran said quietly, speaking to no one in particular. "Now witness the world transform." Chancellor Drath entered the chamber, triumphant and proud. He did not yet know what he had started. He did not understand that everything was about to change. Jake stood before the council and spoke 4 words that would echo through history. "Earth responds with war." Dr. Karen Mills opened her eyes in darkness. Her head throbbed and dust filled her lungs. She coughed and tried to remember where she was. The underground shelter. She had been running when the explosions started. How long had she been unconscious? Karen activated her emergency light. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing cracked concrete walls and fallen support beams. She was alive. But what about everyone else? Karen climbed through the rubble toward the shelter exit. It took 2 hours to clear enough debris to push open the heavy door. When she finally emerged, the sight stopped her cold. New Haven was gone. The agricultural domes that had fed the colony lay in twisted metal ruins. The residential sector where families had lived was nothing but scorched foundations. Bodies lay in the streets. Karen fell to her knees and wept. She forced herself to move. Her emergency beacon was still functioning. If anyone was coming to help, they would track that signal. Karen activated it and waited. The rescue ship arrived 36 hours later. By then, Karen had found 12 other survivors hiding in various shelters. They were all that remained of 3,000 people. Admiral Peter Grant watched Karen's testimony on the screen in Earth's military command center. The woman's voice was steady, but her eyes held a darkness that would never fully heal. She described what she had seen. Zerati soldiers shooting civilians who tried to surrender. Children killed in their homes. Medical facilities deliberately targeted. "This was not a military operation," Karen said. "This was extermination. They wanted to hurt us. To terrify us. To prove they could." The video feed ended. Admiral Grant sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, the command center buzzed with activity. Officers worked at stations, monitoring communications from across human space. But everything had changed in the past 3 days. "Sir, we have confirmation," said an aide. "All reserve fleets are reporting in. The industrial complexes on Mars, Europa, and Titan are retooling. Every shipyard from Earth to the outer colonies is working at full capacity." Grant nodded. He had given those orders the moment news of New Haven reached Earth. Protocols that had not been activated in 200 years were now in full effect. Humanity was going to war. Captain Ryan Hughes and his team dropped into Zerati space from a stealth ship. They wore dark suits designed to absorb sensor scans. Their mission was simple in concept, dangerous in execution. Get intelligence on Zerati military positions and capabilities. Ryan's team of 12 moved through the shadows of a Zerati supply station. The alien facility sprawled across an asteroid, storing weapons and fuel for their expanding fleet. Guards patrolled the corridors, but humans had studied Zerati patterns for months. They knew the gaps. 3 minutes, whispered Lieutenant Sam Cooper through the comlink. He was accessing their computer systems, downloading everything. Ryan watched the corridor. A Zerati guard walked past, never noticing the humans pressed into a maintenance alcove. The alien's confidence was clear in his stride. The Zerati believed they had already won. "Got it," Sam said. "And I am planting a little surprise." They extracted without being detected. 6 hours later, when the team was safely away, the supply depot's fuel storage developed a catastrophic malfunction. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. Sub-Commander Threx watched the supply depot burn and felt doubt creep into his thoughts. The official report called it an accident. But Threx had been a soldier for 20 years. He knew sabotage when he saw it. The humans had done this. But how? Zerati security was supposed to be impenetrable. Yet somehow, the enemy had walked into a military installation, stolen information, and destroyed it without anyone noticing until it was too late. Threx accessed the restricted communications from the front lines. What he read troubled him. Human forces were not fighting like the intelligence reports had predicted. They used tactics that made no sense according to traditional military doctrine. They adapted constantly, never doing the same thing twice. In one engagement, human fighters had pretended to retreat, then circled back and attacked from 6 different directions simultaneously. In another, human ships had shut down all power and drifted like debris, then activated and fired at point-blank range. They fight like no one we have ever faced, one report stated. They do not follow the rules of warfare. They invent new rules every day. Back on Earth, factories that had produced civilian goods were now producing weapons. Corporations that competed with each other in peacetime were now sharing resources and technology. Independent colonies that had their own governments were unified under a single command structure. Linda Hayes stood in a meeting with Earth's High Command. The Galactic Council is attempting to mediate, she reported. Several species are urging both sides to negotiate. What is the Zerati response? Asked General Frank Bishop. Chancellor Drath has refused all diplomatic contact. He believes he is winning. His intelligence tells him that human military capacity is limited. Admiral Grant smiled grimly. His intelligence is about to be proven very wrong. How long until the defensive platforms are fully online? Another week, replied an officer. The network will span every major human system. Nothing will get through without us knowing about it. Linda looked troubled. Admiral, I received a private message from Elder Voxthran. He wants to speak with me. What about? He said he is not worried about humanity losing this war. He is worried about what humans will become if we are pushed too far. Grant considered this. The Elder was ancient and wise. If he was concerned, there was a reason. Meet with him, Grant said. Learn what he knows. The Elders have seen things we have not. Captain Nicole Foster led her fighter squadron through a debris field near the colony of New Terra. Zerati ships were attempting to break through the defensive perimeter. Her orders were simple. Stop them. All wings, this is leader. Execute pattern Delta 7. Her pilots responded instantly. 20 human fighters split into 4 groups, each moving in a different direction. The Zerati command ship tried to track them and failed. Human fighters were smaller and faster, and their pilots trained for scenarios the Zerati had never imagined. Nicole locked onto a Zerati destroyer and fired. Her missiles struck the engine section, disabling the ship without destroying it. Around her, other pilots did the same. Disabled ships could be salvaged for intelligence. Destroyed ships told them nothing. They are retreating, called out one of her pilots. Nicole watched the Zerati fleet pull back. This was the 3rd engagement this week where the enemy had withdrawn. They were learning that human space was not easy prey. But Nicole knew this was only the beginning. The real war was still ahead. The Zerati main fleet assembled at the edge of human space. 200 warships, the largest military force the Empire had ever gathered. General Carvex stood on the bridge of the command vessel and studied the tactical display. 5 human systems lay ahead, each one a target. All ships report ready, said an officer. Carvex nodded. Begin the offensive. Show these humans what it means to defy the Zerati Empire. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. When they emerged, the battle began. Admiral Peter Grant watched the attack unfold on screens in the command center. Red markers appeared across multiple systems. New Boston, New Terra, Hope's Landing, Freeman's World, and the mining stations of the belt were all under assault simultaneously. They are committing everything, observed an aide. Yes, Grant said calmly. which means we know exactly where their forces are. Execute Plan Harvest. Orders flowed across human space. Ships that had been positioned in seemingly random patterns suddenly moved with purpose. Defense platforms that the Zerati did not know existed activated and revealed themselves. Minefields that had been carefully placed over weeks became active. At New Boston, Captain Nicole Foster led the defensive fighter wings. The Zerati attack was fierce, but it followed predictable patterns. Large ships moving in formation, overwhelming firepower directed at fixed positions. All wings, break and scatter, Nicole commanded. Pattern Chaos 3. Her pilots understood immediately. 20 fighters became 20 individual threats, each moving unpredictably. Zerati targeting systems struggled to track so many separate objects moving in random patterns. Nicole dove under a Zerati cruiser and fired at its sensor array. The ship went blind. Another pilot hit its communication system. Disabled and confused, the cruiser drifted out of formation. "This is not how space combat works," shouted a Zerati commander over an open channel. "You do not follow proper attack formations." Nicole grinned inside her helmet. "That is exactly the point." At Hope's Landing, Lieutenant Ben Parker and his combat engineers had prepared surprises. The Zerati landed ground forces, expecting to overwhelm the colony's defenses. Instead, they found automated turrets that popped up from hidden positions. Drones the size of insects that attached to armor and disabled systems. Mines that looked like ordinary rocks. "They are adapting too quickly," a Zerati officer reported. "Every tactic we use, they counter within hours." Ben watched from his command post as Zerati forces retreated in confusion. Human engineering had turned the battlefield into a nightmare for conventional military thinking. The destroyer Defiance was heavily damaged and losing power. Zerati battlecruiser had locked weapons on a civilian transport ship carrying refugees from New Boston. The transport had no weapons, no shields, and no chance. Captain Ellen Price made her decision in seconds. "All hands, evacuate to pods." "Engineering, give me every bit of speed you have left." Her crew scrambled to escape pods as the Defiance accelerated directly toward the battlecruiser. The Zerati commander realized what was happening too late. The human ship, nearly dead in space moments before, rammed the battlecruiser at full speed. The impact tore both ships apart. But the civilian transport escaped. Rescue vessels picked up the Defiance crew 3 hours later. When they pulled Captain Price from her pod, she was smiling. "Did the transport make it?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. All 800 passengers are safe." "Good. That is what matters." The story of the Defiance spread through both fleets. Humans were willing to sacrifice their ships to save civilians. This was a level of dedication that shocked the Zerati military. General Carvex reviewed the battle reports with growing concern. The offensive had been underway for 2 weeks. They had not captured a single human system. Casualties were 3 times higher than projections. And worst of all, human forces were now counterattacking. "They are not supposed to be this good," Carvex said to his staff. Intelligence said human military capability was limited. That they focused on commerce and science, not war. "Intelligence was wrong, sir," replied an aide carefully. Carvex pulled up footage from a recent engagement. A human cruiser had been surrounded by 5 Zerati ships. Instead of surrendering or fighting, it had released hundreds of drones that created a massive cloud of electronic interference. In the confusion, the human ship escaped while 2 Zerati vessels collided with each other. "They do not fight with honor," Carvex muttered. His aide dared to speak. "Sir, perhaps honor is not the point. They fight to win." Captain Ryan Hughes and his team struck deep into Zerati territory again. This time, their target was a communication relay that coordinated fleet movements. The station was heavily guarded, but humans had learned something important. The Zerati relied on their technology too much. They trusted their sensors and automated systems. Ryan's team used that against them. They hacked into the system and convinced it that the team were maintenance workers. The sensors saw what the computer told them to see. Ryan walked right past guards who never questioned the computer's identification. They planted explosives and data miners throughout the facility. When they were done, the communication relay would continue working, but everything it transmitted would also be copied to human intelligence. "Sir, I am seeing something in their classified files," said Sam Cooper. "The Zerati captured human prisoners from a damaged ship. They are holding them at a facility 3 systems from here." Ryan's expression hardened. "Mark the location. We are getting them back." The rescue mission happened 4 days later. Zerati guards at the prisoner facility did not understand what hit them. Human special forces dropped from stealth ships, breached the facility, and extracted all 17 prisoners in under 12 minutes. By the time Zerati reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. Sub-Commander Threx heard about the rescue and felt his doubts grow stronger. His people had been told humans were weak, that they were soft from centuries of peace, that they would collapse under military pressure. Instead, humans were demonstrating capabilities that should not be possible. They rescued prisoners from secure facilities. They destroyed supply depots without being detected. They fought with creativity that made Zerati tactical doctrine useless. Threx accessed a secret communication channel. He sent a carefully worded message to an intermediary who might pass it to human intelligence. He offered information about Zerati defensive positions in exchange for assurances that civilian Zerati worlds would not be harmed. He did not receive a response immediately. But Threx was patient. He would wait. Admiral Grant reviewed the strategic situation. 3 months into the war, the momentum had shifted. Human forces had stopped the Zerati offensive completely. Now they were pushing into enemy territory. "The defensive platform network is fully operational," reported an officer. "Every major system is protected. We have detection coverage across 90% of human space." Grant nodded. "Begin Phase 2. Target their supply lines and communication networks. Cut them off from their home systems." Across the galaxy, other species watched the war with growing concern. The humans who had seemed so peaceful were now demonstrating military capabilities that rivaled the greatest warrior races. Elder Voxthran addressed the Galactic Council. His voice was heavy with the weight of knowledge. "I tried to warn you. Humans do not fight wars the way we do. They study. They adapt. They invent. Every battle teaches them something new. And they never, ever give up." Chancellor Drath was not present. He remained on Zurith Prime, still confident that victory was possible. But his generals knew better. They had seen what humans could do. The war was far from over, but the outcome was becoming clear. Jake Morrison stood in the war room aboard the human command station. 6 months had passed since New Haven. 6 months of constant fighting. The walls displayed tactical maps showing Zerati space. Red zones indicated contested areas. Blue showed human control. There was far more blue than there had been 3 months ago. "We have pushed them back to their core systems," Admiral Grant said. "Their fleets are scattered. Their supply lines are broken. But they refuse to surrender." Linda Hayes entered the room carrying a data tablet. "I have been in contact with Sub-Commander Threx. He represents a growing faction within the Zerati military that wants to end this war." "Can we trust him?" asked Grant. "He has provided accurate intelligence 3 times now. His information helped us avoid casualties in the Kestrel sector engagement. I believe he is genuine." Jake studied the maps. Zurith Prime, the enemy homeworld, sat at the center of their territory. It was heavily defended, but human forces had advanced to within striking distance. "What does Threx tell you about the situation on their homeworld?" Jake asked. Linda activated her tablet, displaying a report. "Chancellor Drath is increasingly isolated. His own military commanders question his decisions. The civilian population is terrified. They never wanted this war. Drath promised them easy victories and new territory. Instead, they have lost thousands of soldiers and gained nothing." "They started this," Grant said coldly. "They killed 3,000 civilians at New Haven." "I know," Linda said quietly. "But most Zerati citizens had no say in that decision. They are not our enemy. Drath and his government are." Captain Ryan Hughes and his team prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. They were going to Zurith Prime itself. The goal was not combat. It was surveillance. Human intelligence needed to know what was happening inside the enemy government. "This is insane," said Lieutenant Sam Cooper. "Their homeworld. Their capital city. Right into the heart of enemy territory." "That is why it will work," Ryan replied. "They will never expect us to be that bold." They dropped from orbit using stealth pods that looked like space debris. The pods burned up in atmosphere, releasing the team at high altitude. They glided to landing zones on the outskirts of the capital city. Ryan's team moved through the city at night, using stolen Zerati clothing and forged identification. They looked nothing like Zerati, but in a diverse empire spanning multiple species, different appearances were common. They placed listening devices in government buildings, hacked into communication networks, and recorded conversations between military leaders. What they learned was valuable beyond measure. The Zerati government was collapsing from within. Admiral Peter Grant received Ryan's intelligence and immediately called a strategy session. "Chancellor Drath is planning something desperate," Grant told his officers. "He is talking about bioweapons. Weapons that would target human biology specifically." The room went silent. The use of bioweapons violated every galactic treaty. It was the one line no species crossed, even in total war. "If he releases such weapons, we will have no choice but to respond with overwhelming force," said General Frank Bishop. "We would have to ensure the Zerati could never threaten anyone again." Jake felt sick. This was spiraling toward something terrible. "We need to stop this before it reaches that point. Linda, what about your contact? Can Threx help?" Linda was already working on her communication device. "I will reach out to him. If there are Zerati who oppose Drath's madness, this is the time for them to act." Sub-Commander Threx received the urgent message from human intelligence. His hands shook as he read about the bioweapon plans. Drath had gone too far. This was not warfare. This was genocide. Threx contacted others he trusted within the military. Officers who were tired of the war. Leaders who saw no path to victory. Civilians who mourned the senseless deaths. "We must act now," Threx told them. "If Drath uses these weapons, humanity will destroy us completely. And they will be right to do so." The conspiracy grew quickly. Within days, Threx had support from 3 fleet admirals, dozens of senior officers, and key figures in the civilian government. They planned carefully. One chance. If they failed, they would all be executed as traitors. Meanwhile, human forces executed Operation Isolation. Their mission was to cut Zurith Prime off from the rest of the Empire. Jump gates leading to the homeworld were targeted and destroyed in coordinated strikes. Captain Nicole Foster led one of the attack wings. "Target the gate structure, not the ships defending it," she ordered. "We want to isolate, not massacre." The operation succeeded with minimal casualties. Zurith Prime was now an island, cut off from reinforcements and supply lines. Elder Voxthran addressed the Galactic Council once more. Species from across the galaxy watched the transmission. "You are witnessing what I tried to warn you about," the Elder said. "Humans do not just fight wars. They fundamentally transform them. They turn every engagement into a learning experience. They adapt faster than any species I have ever seen." A young delegate from the Korthan Confederacy spoke up. "But Elder, the Zerati started this conflict. Should humans simply accept aggression?" "No," Voxthran replied. "That is not my point. My point is that when you provoke humans, you do not simply start a war. You trigger something deeper. They will innovate. They will sacrifice. They will do whatever is necessary to protect their people. And in the process, they will change the entire balance of power." Other species began to pay attention. Some started offering to mediate. Others quietly increased their own defenses, suddenly aware that human military capability was far greater than anyone had realized. Jake worked through diplomatic channels frantically. Time was running out. If Drath launched bioweapons, the war would enter a phase that could not be stopped. Millions would die on both sides. "We need to give the resistance movement inside the Zerati government time to act," Jake told Admiral Grant. "Delay the final assault on Zurith Prime." Grant looked at the tactical displays. Human forces were in position. They could strike within hours. End this war. But at what cost? How much time? Grant asked. 72 hours. That is all Threx says he needs. Grant made his decision. We hold position. But if anything goes wrong, if we detect any bio-weapon launch, we strike immediately. On Zurith Prime, Threx and his allies moved into position. The coup was set for midnight, local time. They had support from key military units. The planetary defense forces had been quietly turned to their cause. Even some of Drath's personal guards were sympathetic. Chancellor Drath sat in his office, reviewing the bio-weapon deployment plans. He did not know that outside his door, soldiers loyal to Threx were replacing his guards. He did not know that his communication systems had been compromised. He was isolated and did not realize it. The door opened. Threx entered with 6 armed soldiers. Drath looked up in shock. What is the meaning of this? You are under arrest, Threx said calmly. For war crimes. For planning genocide. For bringing our people to the edge of destruction. Drath reached for his weapon, but he was too slow. The guards disarmed him without violence. You traitor, Drath hissed. I will see you executed. No, Threx replied. It is you who will face justice. Both ours and the galactic communities. Within hours, Threx's forces controlled the government. Key members of Drath's administration were arrested. The bio-weapon facilities were secured. And Threx sent a message to Admiral Grant. We surrender unconditionally. We request mercy and fair treatment. We offer to turn over all war criminals for trial. Grant received the message and looked at Jake. What do you think? I think we have a chance to end this the right way, Jake said. Not with annihilation, but with justice. Grant nodded slowly. He sent orders to all human forces. Cease offensive operations. Hold positions. Prepare for negotiations. The war was not over yet, but the end was finally in sight. The Galactic Council chamber was packed with delegates from every member species. News of the Zerati surrender had spread across the galaxy within hours. Now came the hard part, deciding what happened next. Jake Morrison and Linda Hayes stood at the human delegation platform. Across the chamber, Sub-Commander Threx represented the new Zerati government. He wore simple clothing, not military armor. His expression was somber. Chancellor Drath sat in a secured holding area, awaiting trial. His empire had crumbled in a single night. His dreams of conquest had turned to ash. Elder Voxthran called the session to order. We are here to determine the terms of peace and the fate of those responsible for this war. The floor is open. Several species immediately called for harsh punishment. The Zerati Empire should be dismantled. Their worlds placed under council supervision. Their military capacity permanently reduced to nothing. Jake listened to the demands. Some were reasonable. Others were driven by fear or old grudges. He glanced at Linda, who nodded. It was time for humanity to speak. The human delegation acknowledges the suffering this war has caused, Jake began. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. 3,000 of our people were murdered at New Haven. Many more died in the fighting that followed. We have every right to demand justice. The chamber fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what humanity would demand. We propose the following terms, Jake continued. 1. Chancellor Drath and his inner circle will stand trial for war crimes before a galactic tribunal. 2. The Zerati Empire will pay reparations to the families of New Haven victims and to rebuild what was destroyed. 3. Zerati military capacity will be reduced and monitored for a period of 20 years. 4. The Zerati people will choose their own government through free elections. Murmurs spread through the chamber. These terms were surprisingly moderate. That is all? Asked a delegate from the Vaxian assembly. After what they did to your people? Linda stepped forward. We could demand more. We could occupy their worlds. We could dismantle their society completely. We have the military power to do so. But that is not who we are. Threx rose from his seat. The human delegation shows great wisdom and mercy. My people do not deserve such consideration, but we are grateful for it. We accept these terms completely. The vote passed overwhelmingly. The Zerati Empire would be transformed, but not destroyed. Justice would be served, but vengeance would not rule the day. Dr. Karen Mills watched the council proceedings on a screen at the New Haven Memorial Site. Construction crews were already working to rebuild the colony. The agricultural domes were taking shape. New homes were being raised. She thought about the 3,000 people who had died here. The families torn apart. The dreams ended in fire and violence. Part of her wanted to demand that the Zurati suffer as they had suffered. But another part, a deeper part, knew that continuing the cycle of violence would not bring anyone back. It would only create more grief. Karen placed a flower at the memorial wall. Names were carved into stone. Every victim remembered. Never forgotten. "We will rebuild," she said quietly. "And we will make something better than before." 5 years passed. The galaxy had indeed transformed, just as Elder Voxthran had predicted. Captain Nicole Foster stood in a training facility on Zurith Prime. Around her, young Zurati pilots practiced flight maneuvers. Human instructors worked alongside Zurati veterans, teaching new tactics and strategies. "You are thinking too rigidly," Nicole told a struggling pilot. "Space combat